Hey everybody, welcome to Q&A number 5. And I'm doing this awaiting another hurricane to hit us down here. This time we're on the east side, which is the unfavorable side, but it looks like it might be going into as close as Pensacola, which is too close, but maybe more towards Mississippi, Louisiana. So we'll see how, we're definitely going to get a lot of rain and thunderstorms. Possibly some tornado action. So anyway, such is life when you live in Florida. Just part of something you have to deal with. So, all right, let's see. Without further ado, let's get started here. I think it's Elia Silva asks, "How was the weather in your first few months on the trail? I'm wondering about cold weather." Now, some of these questions are also coming from my trail talks, okay, as well as from the last Q&A session. And Elia, so I started on the 3rd of March. It snowed. Wasn't expecting that, and really the weather was not too bad until that we got to run that Franklin area. Then there was an Arctic clipper that came down. And you might remember this year, if you were watching, there's folks that started out in February, it was very nice weather, and then they had a really bad cold spell come through. So, I mean, that's going to happen. If you don't want sub-freezing temperatures, probably start out, 1 April. But that's when just about everybody starts the AT Nobo, 1 April to 15 April, somewhere in there. So. There's a lot of people to deal with. One of the ways of not having the crowds is to start early. Starting early could mean some snow and ice and some cold. So there is kind of a trade-off there. But we've had some pretty nice Februarys, and first part of March is starting out on the trail. So it kind of also gauge it to what you like. I found out I would much rather hike cold than I would hot and sweaty. Much more pleasant hiking experience for me to hike cold. Because really once you get going, you warm up pretty nicely. So matter of fact, it's hard to make sure you're not sweating so you don't get hypothermia. All right, Kevin S. He wants to know, how long did you want to walk the trail before you actually put foot on Springer? The first time I walked on the Appalachian Trail, I think I was 14 or 15 with the scout group in the Smoky Mountains. And so I've always had this draw to the Appalachian Trail. Then when I had children, we were living in Virginia at the time, and I took my boys out to the AT, and we hiked up 3 ridges down to Harper's Creek. And then we took the Mahar Trail back up to Malpin Fields, and made it kind of a little roundabout there. I think it's 13 miles, maybe not even that. But it, couple of 2 or 3 nights, and had a great hike. And I took him several times to do that. And one of those days, it was the 4th of July. I had all 3 of my children. The one time my daughter went backpacking with me. We were in Malpin Fields as a couple that was through hiking the AT came out the Mahar Trail, and they were getting some water and eating, and started talking to them, and they said they were through hikers, and it had never occurred to me there were people out there that actually were hiking from one end of the trail to the other. So it kind of planted the seed. And then in 2012, in my church congregation, one of the members here, Brett, his trail name, I can't remember what he started out with, but he ended up being called the Dude. And so anyway, the Dude hiked the whole trail, and it really inspired me. That's when it got in my blood that I had to do this. And so it took about 4 years to work things out with, the wife and the business to be able to get to a point where I could take off to go do that. So long answer to a simple question. A comment from Johnkin in reference to how do you get to Springer. He mentioned that from the northeast, some use the Amtrak stop right there in Gainesville, and Gainesville is where I spent the night. Then it's easy to pick up a shuttle up to Springer or to Amicalola Falls. So don't forget about the Amtrak. All right, Del Chafee. He asked me, hey, in putting your tent away, did you do anything special to keep it from always folded in the same way? Because he's also has the same big Agnes that I do. And what he's talking about there is if you always fold a tent the same way, you'll end up with creases in it, and those creases then break down the material, and will end up causing leaks and stuff to happen. So anyway, so what I do is, Dale, is I stuff. You see, a lot of people actually will stuff their tents in the bag. And I take and I just start stuffing my rain fly in first, and then the tent comes in next. Because when you take it out, the tent will come in, get set up, and then the rain fly goes on top. And so the rain fly is the first thing that comes off. It gets shoved in, and then the tent, and you just stuff it. That way, it's never really doing it the same way twice. And one of my grandkids just got here. I'm gonna take a quick break, say hi, and I'll be right back. That was grandchild number 8. Just came in with Grandma. I've got 9 grandchildren. 2 of them are boys. She's the 7th granddaughter out of 9 grandchildren. So I thought about calling her 7 of 9. You get that from Voyager? Anyway, I'll let that one sit for a while. Like how I started had a nickname for my youngest grandson that was born when I hit Port Clinton. I called him Rocky. So hey, maybe I'll call her 7 of 9. That'll be fun, huh? All right. Anyway, let's see. We just got through talking about the just stuffing the tent in. And oh, speaking of tents, I got myself the one from Gossamer Gear. They actually came back in. They had them in stock. I reached out and jumped out and grabbed one. So I haven't had a chance to set it up yet. I'm looking forward to it. I think the previous version was advertised at about 19 ounces, but that doesn't count any of the guy lines and anything like that normally goes in the tent. I threw it on my scale, and I think it was running around 22 ounces. So and significant savings over my big Agnes as far as weight goes. Now I'll have to have to see if I like the single the single layer. I guess I'm having a brain stall of that. Sometimes you get more condensation, so we'll have to see. I'm looking forward to actually trying it out. We got a kind of a little family church camp out coming up in a couple of weeks from now, so planning on taking it out on that, and we'll throw it up. All right, so Brerbug had a comment. He said, one of my sons through hiked the AT in 2001, and he explained that a part of the culture of the trail is that people tend to lose their inhibitions a lot. Folks are not necessarily blatant in exposing themselves, he said, but men and women tend to go about their business of dressing and undressing, and others knew to avert their eyes. Your story about doing your business and having a female walk up on you in the process, and both of you just responding in a casual, humorous manner, reminded me of that. And my friend, the dude, he kind of warned me about that you're in a shelter area. Sometimes people are going to change clothes. You're going to get out of your wet clothes into your dry clothes, right? You never go to bed wet. So that's got to happen in some manner. I never had anybody necessarily expose themselves. People were always good about being discreet, kind of pulling their sleeping bag up to kind of change and everything. And people kind of knew not to be staring at what's going on. I think the first time where I was like, oh, well, this is interesting, was at the top of Georgia Hostel. And, the bunk room has, 6 bunks in the room I was in. Out in the area where the kitchen, there was another 6 bunks. There was another room that had 4 bunks in it. And I remember coming out to go outside, and you're kind of walking through somebody else's bedroom, and, there was a young lady there, and she was changing clothes. And, it was, and she had her sports bra on and her panties on, and she was changing her clothes, and it was just one of those, okay, don't, just be a polite gentleman, don't look, don't stare. Women don't necessarily want to sleep in their sports bra at night. especially if it's wet from sweat. They like to have a chance to dry it off. So oftentimes they will manage to get that sports bra off in a very discreet way. But then it's off, and sometimes the shirt they're wearing may be a little more tighter or looser, but it's you just guys, you be polite, you're a gentleman, you use some discretion, you don't stare, you don't gawk, you treat people with respect, just like you want to be treated with respect. I remember I was halfway through the roller coaster when it was just me and this girl that were there by the time it got dark, and I think if I remember right, I had already kind of very discreetly gotten some dry clothes on, and was just kind of under my quilt and my underwear, and all of a sudden I realized I forgot to take some medicine or something. I had to get up. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna have to put these wet clothes back on and do all this. And I just kind of politely, the girl was kind of reading on her phone. I said, hey, I gotta get up to get something out of my pack here, and I'm in my underwear. And she's just kind of like, hey, no problem. She just rolled over, turned away, and I was able to get up, take care of what I needed to do, got back, and said, hey, I'm done. And she rolled back on her back, and it was. I guess it's no big deal. It's maybe a little uncomfortable the first time you have to do it, or it happens. And it's not necessarily get casual. It's just like, it's got, you got to go to the bathroom. You got to change your clothes. You try and use as much discretion as you can. Don't be an exhibitionist, and don't be a pervert. Enough said. All right. Lamplighter from Canada here. So could you please elaborate a little more about the downside of Helen? And the downside of Helen only came from the paper that Baltimore Jack wrote. He wasn't in favor of going to Helen. Now I understand Helen is a very beautiful town. It's old German architecture. It's a really big tourist area. Matter of fact, I was just in Mississippi this weekend and talking to somebody. And they mentioned the Appalachian Trail, and they're from Gainesville, there, and they said, "Oh man, got to come back up, and you got to go to Helen. It's so pretty." So it's a very, very pretty place. I think if you want to avoid the tourist influence, and you just want to get into town, get a meal, grab some groceries, use the post office box right there by Ingalls, have transportation in there and back from the top of Georgia or from the Budget Inn. It's probably an easy thing just to go in and do and come back. If you want to go and experience Helen, I see no problem about doing that. Okay, so downside, I think I don't know if there is one. It was just his preference not to go to Helen. And in the quest for getting information, which is why I'm doing my trail talk, because I really wanted information on things. I took that as okay, Baltimore Jack's hiked the trail 7 times, and he doesn't like to go to Helen, so I guess I'll avoid it. But no reason on my part. Chris from Florida, he says, Colonel, is there an expected date each year that the AWOL's most recently published book is available? Especially he's interested in getting the 2018 version. If I remember right, it's about the turn of the year. By really end of December, first part of January, I think they're out. You can get them on Amazon. I think you get both the northbound and the southbound version on Amazon. Don't know if you can get the flip-flop version, but I know if you go to atguide.com, and if that doesn't work, just type in David Miller AWOL Guide, and it'll pull up his website, where you can go and you get the northbound, the southbound, the flip-flop version. You can buy strip maps. His book that he wrote. What's really cool about going there is you can buy a couple of the extra really thick mill Ziplocs that he uses. That's exactly the right size to put the guidebook in to keep it from getting wet. You can also buy, which I like a lot, you can buy the unbound version from him. Okay, highly recommend that. If you like the bound version, you're going to use it enough, it's going to start falling apart on you anyway. A lot of people will only take half of the book with them instead of the whole thing, and so they'll take a razor blade and they'll cut the spine anyway, and then they'll take all that time pulling it apart. Well, you can buy the unbound version of the AWOL guide, which is what I recommend. Worked out real well for me. And I didn't burn my pages in the AWOL guide. A lot of people do. They burn them, they throw them away. Me, I use it as historical record. You see that I circled the places where I camped every night. You think you're going to remember where you stayed, but over time that starts to fade, and you're like, "Wow, where did I stay during this period of time?" So for me, I used it as a little journal. I think for the first I think until I think the first 16 days I actually kept a little notebook, or I wrote some stuff down. I eventually gave that up because I was doing my video logs. A lot of people will spend a lot of time on trail journals and write their stuff in trail journals, but I chose to use the video format to record my trip. So I kind of stopped doing that written log, but I did keep my AWOL guide where I would make annotations of where I resupplied and where I slept and things like that. So Dan Austin, I know it changes, but for you, was there a bad spot or section of water on the AT so far, so up to New York? Great water in Georgia, North Carolina. It's sweet water. Smoky Mountains, you got to be very careful. It should be great, but they allow horses in the Smokies. On the AT, the trail maintainers ride horses, and you know what horses do, and so you got to be really careful with viruses in the Smokies. Good water through Tennessee. I think once you cross, you kind of go down to Hampton, Tennessee, then you climb up Iron Mountain, and Iron Mountain is what's going to funnel you into Damascus. You're up on this ridge line. This is kind of the first, because most of the time you're crossing ridge lines, up and down through Georgia, North Carolina, and then you get in the Smokies, and then you're kind of up on a ridge line for a long way. But there seems to be plenty of water, actually off pretty close to the trail there. But the time you get in that Iron Mountain, that's one of the first times you get up on a ridgeline, and there's not a lot of water. You got to walk. You got to go down to get it. There were some longer sections there, and that was kind of the start of, I call it, water management, where I started paying attention to where the water was at. You couldn't just my granddaughter again. You just couldn't assume that everything was gonna be fine. You actually had to start doing some planning. So, hey, sweetie. Let's see. Then, as far as bad water that goes, well, once again, water management through Virginia was pretty critical. But other than the Punch Bowl is the camping area there, a shelter area there in Virginia, that's pretty close to oh gosh, Buena Vista, that area. Punch Bowl, there was some pretty nasty water there, quality wise. And then as you go up, let's see, went to New Jersey. New Jersey has some pretty questionable water. So if I was the kind of guy that wanted to stick on the trail as much as possible with very few in-town stops, is there any services offered that would bring a resupply of food to you on the trail? The only place that I know of that offers that is one of the outfitters in Maine during the 100-mile wilderness. I never heard anybody talk about any of that during any of my hikes so far. I do know one guy that was planning on pretty much slack packing all of New England all the way to Katahdin. He found a guy. It was going to cost him, I think it was going to cost him about $5,000-$6,000 to have this guy just, literally just shuttle him from slack pack to slack pack. What you find is, if you don't want to really go into town and spend a lot of time in town, a lot of times you can kind of go to a shelter. There'd be a camping area pretty close to town. You could very easily go in, resupply, and come back. Some people even will just zero do it maybe a zero or a Nero there in a shelter area near a town, because they just don't have the money to constantly be staying at a hostel or a hotel. And there's a lot of places that allow you just to send a drop box there. You'll see those in the AWOL guide. They'll offer those services, and you can literally, just come off the trail, go a short distance, get your drop box. They may charge you a $5 fee for that service, and maybe spend $5 and get a shower. Don't underestimate a lot of people don't want to go into town because they don't have the money. But at the same time, don't underestimate the power of having a shower and putting some clean clothes on to boost your spirits. I ran across guys in Virginia, I swear they had never washed their clothes. I'm not sure they ever showered the way they smell, maybe, not very often. I remember one guy, for us guys, our mustache, we grow it all grows at a different pace. And the hairs right through here tend to grow faster. Okay, I remember this guy, and he has this mustache that was probably down almost, the top was almost touching the bottom of his mouth and was closed. So I really had a hard time getting food in his mouth without straining it. Then he had these hairs here that came way down like walrus tusks. Really pretty gross, actually. Obviously not very sanitary. But hey, hike your own hike, not trying to judge. It's just, if you want to enjoy your AT experience, try and work in and have the resources to stop in now and then, and get a cooked meal, even if it's a gross Big Mac. Okay, get in and get yourself something to eat that somebody else fixed for you, and take a shower and do some laundry. Yes, it's going to be sweaty and 5 hours after. It's going to be gross 5 hours after you start hiking again. But you know what? It just feels good to put a clean pair of clothes on, and it does a lot to lift your spirits. And you have to keep your spirits up if you're hiking long distance. So, okay, that's it for today's Q&A. Hope you guys got something out of it. If this sparked any questions that you have or anything from the Trail Legs dialogue that I'm doing, put the questions in and I'll get to them hopefully as soon as I can. I can't promise that this is an every week type thing, because I got a life and a job and grandkids and things to do and hurricanes to go secure stuff from. So anyway, have a good day everybody, and hopefully we won't get too wet.